Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Jawad Tehami and these are the headlines. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has unveiled his government's strategy to tackle Islamophobia in the West. In a televised speech, Khan said the heads of all Muslim states should work collectively to deal with the issue. The Prime Minister said he, along with other Muslim leaders, will try to convince the West to impose a Holocaust-like ban on Islamophobia. Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi says Islamabad will do whatever it can to convince the Taliban to remain engaged in the Afghan peace process. In an interview with Reuters, Qureshi said the Taliban make their own decisions, but it will be in their national interest to remain part of the peace process. The Taliban decided to shun summits after the US said it would withdraw troops by the 11th of September, later than the May 1st deadline. Indian troops have martyred 2 more civilians during a raid in occupied Kashmir's Shopian district. Indian troops have killed over 300 Kashmiris since the revocation of the territory's autonomy in August 2019. Pakistan has imposed a 14-day ban on travelers from India, citing the spread of the new variant of the coronavirus in the neighboring country. Pakistan is witnessing a spike in infections amid the third wave of the virus, recording over 5,100 cases and 73 deaths in the last 24 hours. India is also reeling under its worst coronavirus surge, recording the biggest single-day increase in infections. Globally, there are more than 3 million deaths and over 141 million infections. The EU has imposed sanctions on 10 Myanmar military officials and 2 firms linked to the army over the coup and the crackdown on protesters. The military has killed more than 720 people since it seized power in February and detained elected leaders. Those were the headlines and detailed stories right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has unveiled his government strategy to tackle Islamophobia in the West. In a televised speech, Khan said the heads of all the Muslim states should work collectively to deal with the issue. The Prime Minister said he, along with other Muslim leaders, will try to convince the West to impose a Holocaust-like ban on Islamophobia. He has already written letters to the Muslim leaders in this regard. Khan said the blasphemous acts against the Prophet, peace be upon him, hurt the sentiments of Muslims worldwide. He further called for a sustained campaign as the only long-lasting solution against such incidents. Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi says Islamabad will do whatever it can to convince the Taliban to remain engaged in the Afghan peace process. The statement comes ahead of a key summit on Afghan peace in Istanbul, which starts on the 24th of April. In an interview with Reuters, Qureshi said the Taliban make their own decisions, but it will be in their national interest to remain part of the process. The Taliban decided to shun summits after the US said it will withdraw troops by the 11th of September, later than the May 1st deadline. Angered at the delay in the withdrawal, the Taliban warned the US of consequences for breaching the Doha peace deal. But US Secretary of State Antony Blinken said on Sunday that it will not be in the Taliban's interest if they start up something again. Indian troops have martyred 2 more civilians during a raid in occupied Kashmir's Shopian district. Several others were also wounded when Indian forces opened fire at civilians protesting against the extrajudicial killings of Kashmiris. Indian troops have killed over 300 Kashmiris since the revocation of territory's autonomy in August 2019. Additionally, more than 14,000 people have been arrested, including politicians and even children. Iran's foreign ministry says the country is open to direct talks with Saudi Arabia. It comes after media reported that two regional rivals recently held secret talks in the Iraqi capital, Baghdad. At a press conference, Foreign Ministry spokesman Saeed Khatibzadeh said the talks will benefit the two countries and regional stability. But he did not confirm or deny the reported talks on April 9 in Baghdad. Khatibzadeh added that media outlets have used contradictory quotes and have had a history of fabricating news. The two countries severed diplomatic ties in 2016 following an attack on the Saudi embassy in Tehran. The Ukrainian foreign minister has urged the EU to impose new sanctions on Russia to avoid a further escalation in the standoff between the two countries. He made the demand on Twitter after addressing EU foreign ministers via video conference. Speaking after the conference, EU's foreign policy chief Jose Borrell said Russia has amassed over 150,000 troops on Ukraine's border and Crimea. But he said no new sanctions have been planned for the time being. Moscow and Kiev accuse each other of fueling tensions in eastern Ukraine, where fighting has escalated between Ukrainian troops and the rebels in recent weeks. The Czech Republic has called on the European Union for an expression of solidarity against Russia. Following a virtual meeting with the top EU diplomats, the acting Czech foreign minister said Moscow's eviction of 20 Czech diplomats in response to Prague's expulsion of 18 Russian staff was a stronger than expected reaction. Jan Hamanchak added that the government will consider further steps against Russia. He said that it will be up to member states of the EU if they add some concrete decisions. Prague expelled Moscow's diplomats over suspicions that Russian intelligence was behind a 2014 explosion at an ammunition depot. The row is the biggest between the two countries since the end of decades of Soviet domination of Eastern Europe in 1989. EU foreign ministers are set to meet virtually to discuss the deteriorating health of Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny. In a statement, the EU's foreign policy chief, Josep Borrell, called on Moscow to grant Navalny immediate access to medical professionals. He said the EU considers Navalny's sentencing politically motivated and against international human rights obligations. Earlier, the United States warned Russia of consequences if Navalny dies in prison from a hunger strike. A group of doctors has warned that Navalny risks cardiac arrest any minute as his health deteriorates. Allies of the jailed Kremlin critic also announced a large street protest on Wednesday. The EU has blacklisted 10 Myanmar military officials and 2 firms linked to the army over the post-coup crackdown on protesters. Speaking after the virtual talks with his EU counterparts, German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas said the ruling junta is maneuvering the country into a dead end. European diplomats said the 2 firms hit with asset freezes dominate sectors including trading, cigarettes and consumer goods. Meanwhile, anti-coup activists have once again taken to the streets, demanding an end to the military rule. A few protesters were detained in Mandalay amid a continued crackdown on demonstrators. The military has killed more than 720 people since it seized power in February and detained elected leaders. ISIS has claimed the responsibility for the attack on 2 wells at the Bay Hassan oil field in northern Iraq. In a statement, the Iraqi oil ministry said the attack did not cause a fire or affect production. It also did not stop oil pumping from the well. Meanwhile, at least 5 rockets hit near an Iraqi airbase housing U.S. contractors north of Baghdad. Iraqi officials said there were no casualties reported after the incident. Lebanon's caretaker Prime Minister Hassan Diab has held talks with top Qatari officials on developments in his country. According to state media, he held 2 separate meetings with the Qatari Foreign Minister and Defense Minister. The discussions in both the meetings focused on strengthening bilateral relations between Doha and Beirut. The Qatari government has repeatedly called on Lebanese political parties to agree on forming a government. Prime Minister-designate Saad Hariri and President Michel Aoun are locked in a standoff over the formation of the government. Lebanon is facing a severe economic crisis, with the local currency losing nearly all its value against the US dollar. In Mali, at least 40 people have been killed in recent clashes between militants and traditional hunters. The government of Mali's Mopti region said the fighting has displaced about 1,000 people. A local official said that the clashes began as the dispute between two brothers. Clashes in Mali's semi-arid and desert regions are frequent, compounding a dire security situation in the country. In Nigeria, at least 12 people have died in a tanker explosion following a road accident in central Benue State. The Emergency Management Agency said the explosion has also destroyed 50 houses. It said the explosion occurred after the tanker veered off the road, spilling oil that caught fire. The agency added the authorities are trying to control the fire. In the US, 5 people have been critically injured in a mass shooting at a liquor store in Shreveport City, Louisiana. Authorities on the scene described the injuries life-threatening, but it is not clear who was responsible for the shooting. Police say they are looking for a white Ford vehicle and have deployed 11 units on the scene. Earlier, at least 3 people were killed in a shooting in Austin, Texas. In a tweet, police warned the scene is still active and people are being asked to avoid the area. In a separate shooting, 3 people were killed and 2 others wounded in Wisconsin's Kenosha County. The American space agency NASA has successfully flown a small helicopter on Mars. The drone, called Ingenuity, was airborne for less than a minute, but NASA is celebrating what represents the first controlled flight by an aircraft on the red planet. The space agency is promising more adventurous flights in the coming days. More stories to follow, but right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. India has reported its highest daily cases yet again, as nearly 274,000 people tested positive, with over 1,600 deaths overnight. Globally, the virus has claimed over 3 million lives and infected 141 million people. More in this report.
The third wave of COVID-19 is raging as the world continues to struggle with equitable vaccine distribution. The world's biggest vaccine producer, India, is also running out of COVID-19 vaccines amid rising infections. Indian capital New Delhi's Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal has announced a complete curfew in the city for 6 days. In a statement, Kejriwal said the city is facing acute shortages of hospital beds, medical oxygen supplies, and key medicines. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has cancelled trip to India due to coronavirus worries, while Hong Kong has also banned flights from India for 2 weeks over the presence of the N5015 variant. In the US, half of all adults have received at least one vaccine shot. Just south of the US, sanctions hit Venezuela has only just queued itself for the vaccine, as infections and deaths continue to rise.
I can announce that this week, starting April 19, Monday, the rest of the $120 million deposit into the COVAX system will be completed. Venezuela is now in line for vaccines. Resources have been obtained, resources that were freed up from the blockade.
In more disturbing news, a new Israeli study has found Pfizer's vaccine to be ineffective against the South African variant. While infections and fatalities continue to rise in France, Italy, and Germany, while Britain has seen a major drop in deaths. And in a rare moment of happiness amid pandemic anxiety, hundreds of passengers have thronged Australian airports as an open border system began with New Zealand. The measure allows Australian residents to fly for the first time in over a year without having to quarantine for 2 weeks.
It means everything. It's mixed emotions. It's sad circumstances that she's here for the loss of their brother, but we're happy that we get this opportunity to spend time with family now. Definitely, it's unfortunate for other families due to COVID and everything, but we're so lucky to have family now that can attend special things like this.
Meanwhile, Japan's Osaka prefecture is planning to ask the government to declare a state of emergency.
Pakistan has imposed a ban on travelers from India through air and land routes for the next 2 weeks. The National Command Operations Center cites the spread of a new variant of coronavirus in India as the reason behind the move. This comes as Pakistan recorded 73 more deaths from COVID-19 over the past 24 hours. The Health Ministry said the nationwide death toll has reached 16,316. It said over 5,000 people tested positive overnight, with the overall caseload crossing 761,000. In India, citizens have slammed Prime Minister Narendra Modi over rallies and festivals amid a sharp increase in COVID-19 cases. Hashtags like Resign Modi and Super Spreader Modi have been trending on Twitter as bodies piled up in crematoriums. India is currently recording more new cases of coronavirus than any other country. But despite the surging cases, Modi and his ministers have campaigned heavily ahead of state elections in West Bengal. Tens of thousands of Hindu devotees have gathered daily in close proximity to immerse themselves in the Ganges. The festival is yet to be officially called off, despite authorities detecting hundreds of infections among the participants. As Italy prepares to reopen amid the pandemic, hundreds of entertainment and hospitality industry workers in Rome pleaded with the government for a lifeline. The workers beat black trunks as a form of protest at Piazza del Popolo. They demanded a fund from the government to help them survive. This follows weeks of clashes between small business owners and police after businesses remained closed due to lockdown. Current restrictions are set to expire at the start of May, and no decision has been taken on how to replace them. In Cuba, the ruling Communist Party has elected President Miguel Diaz-Canel to succeed Raul Castro as party first secretary. This comes days after former President Castro said he was stepping down as head of the Communist Party. The succession marks the end of 6 decades of rule by brothers Fidel and Raul Castro, who led Cuba's leftist 1959 revolution. Last week, Castro said he was retiring with a sense of having fulfilled his mission and confident in the future of the country. He added that he would hand over the leadership to a younger generation full of anti-imperialist spirit. The transition comes at a difficult time for Cuba, with the economy struggling and in urgent need of reform. Japan has offered South Korean experts to be part of the IAEA team overseeing the Fukushima water release. Earlier, Seoul expressed concerns of Tokyo's plans to release more than 1.2 million tons of contaminated water into the Pacific Ocean. Japanese ambassador to Seoul, Koichi Aiboshi, termed South Korea's participation possible. Talking to reporters, Aiboshi said the matter is to be discussed between the IAEA and the South Korean government. He said Tokyo will make various efforts to provide Seoul with information about the discharge. The envoy added Japan will work to ensure safety in the disposal process. The United Nations has called on the U.S. to commit to halving its greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. This comes ahead of a 2-day virtual climate change summit from 22nd of April to be hosted by the U.S. In an interview, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said the move will encourage similar action from world's other large emitters. He called the summit a make it or break it moment for climate action. The UN chief urged all major emitters to set targets for drastic emission reductions this decade. Eruptions continue from the La Soufriere volcano in the Caribbean island of St. Vincent. The United Nations says the situation could spiral into humanitarian crisis. An alliance of Latin American countries has sent aid to the struggling St. Vincent and Grenadines government. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister of St. Vincent said he expects more donations. About 20,000 people have been evacuated from their homes since the eruptions began last week. In South Africa, a wildfire on the slopes of Table Mountain has forced University of Cape Town students to evacuate. Flames set several campus buildings ablaze, and firefighters used helicopters to waterbomb the area. Officials said one firefighter sustained burn wounds and was hospitalized for the treatment. The university is largely built on the slopes of Devil's Peak and is situated close to where the fire started. Some roads were closed as heavy smoke could be seen from kilometers away. The fire started early on Sunday near a memorial on Devil's Peak before spreading rapidly up the slopes. China is in the lead as the world seeks to extract a largely untapped fuel source beneath the ocean floor. The extracted methane hydrate has been nicknamed flammable ice. More in this report.
Buried deep in the ocean floors, the highly valuable ice crystals are scientifically named as methane hydrate. Researchers say there are enough reserves of these compounds to last for thousands of years, but it is extremely hard to extract them. China, however, made a huge breakthrough in 2017 by setting a world record for retrieving the highest amounts of this precious fossil fuel in a single attempt. Last year, it again stunned the world with a second successful attempt at harnessing the resource in the South China Sea.
Our platform was designed to operate in the North Sea, which has the roughest conditions in the world for offshore oil and gas production. So our specifications are among the best in the world. This enables us to continue operation in a typhoon, as long as the storm doesn't hit the platform head-on.
Experts say gas hydrates are cleaner than other fossil fuels like oil and coal. Production of methane from deep-sea deposits on a commercial scale could provide a vital transition energy source during the shift towards renewable energies. The cutting-edge technology required to access the ocean's depths will likely also benefit other parts of the marine economy.
So currently, China, coal provides 60% of their energy. These days, I think offshore drilling can provide much cheaper oil and natural gas and help China to gradually upgrade the structure of its energy and reduce the carbon emission.
Experts say China's efforts to develop its blue economy will help create a more sustainable future. The country aims to peak its emissions over the next decade and then rapidly decrease to reach carbon neutrality by 2060.
Now, the climate change is threatening the future of South Korean women's centuries-old tradition of free dive fishing in the sea. More in this report.
Clad in a black wetsuit and pink face mask, Jin So-hee's figure cleanly parts the green-blue water until she abruptly dives below the surface, her purple fins disappearing into the deep. When she resurfaces a minute and a half later, her gloved hands grip 6 or 7 sea cucumbers. Jin's partner, Woo Jung-min, says she once collected baskets full of sea cucumbers, but these days she has to dive deeper to find them. She says it is easier to find golf balls than sea cucumbers now.
We are collecting less, so we feel that environmental and climatic problems cause this. The problems seem very real to us. Today, I am reminded once again this is really serious after I calculated the amount that I worked in March.
Environmental pollution have made finding enough sea life to harvest more difficult for Jin and other South Korean sea women. Every year, the waters are a little less icy, warming as much as 2.6 times more than the world average, changing the undersea habitat.
We're collecting less, so we feel that environmental and climatic problems caused this. The problems seem very real to us. Today, I'm reminded once again this is really serious after I calculated the amount that I worked in March.
For divers like Jin and Woo, they worry about the dwindling number of young divers, hoping to keep the tradition alive and hope they can make enough to keep food on their own tables.
It's time for a short break. We'll be back with more stories. Stay tuned. Welcome back. The Boa Forum for Asia annual conference is being held in China's Henan province. Chinese President Xi Jinping will deliver a keynote speech via video link on Tuesday at the opening plenary. More in this report.
China is signaling it is open for business with the resumption of its high-profile Boa Forum for Asia. It is an opportunity for the government to make a renewed effort to lure foreign investors in a post-pandemic world. More than 2,600 delegates from over 60 countries are attending the 20th annual conference in Henan.
The pandemic has further exposed and exacerbated the problems facing the world's economic development, judging from which the realization of the United Nations 2030 Sustainable Development Goals still faces enormous challenges. Now all countries have realized the importance of accelerating economic restructuring and green development.
This year's conference is themed A World in Change, Join Hands to Strengthen Global Governance and Advance Belt and Road Cooperation. It focuses on the forces resisting multilateralism and bent on unilateral actions for political gains.
Along with this pandemic, there is another worrying trend. That is, there are not only natural viruses but also political viruses. Some people are advocating ideological segregation and ganging up. This is anti-nature, anti-civilization, anti-science, and anti-humanity.
The four-day conference that started on Sunday ends on Wednesday.
And now the business updates. The U.S. stocks have declined as the weakness in the technology sector weighed on the broader market. This led a Nasdaq Composite to trade down by nearly 1% lower. The S&P 500 traded nearly 0.5% lower at open. The Dow Jones Industrial Average also traded marginally lower at open. Meanwhile, the oil prices have steadied as concerns about demand from rising coronavirus cases were tempered by a weaker dollar. In football, Borussia Dortmund have thrashed Werder Bremen 4-1 in their Bundesliga encounter. The win revives Dortmund's hopes for a top 4 finish as they are in 5th place with 49 points.
Striker Erling Haaland scored twice in 4 minutes, ending his 7-game goal drought in all competitions. Meanwhile, Leicester City beat Southampton 1-0 to reach their first FA Cup final since 1969. They will now clash with Chelsea for the title on 15th of May. In the English Premier League, Manchester United defeated Burnley 3-1 at Old Trafford. Mason Greenwood's brace helped United close the gap on leaders Manchester City to only 8 points. In another contest, Arsenal played a 1-1 draw against relegation battling Fulham at home. Elsewhere, Atletico Madrid hammered struggling Eibar 5-0 to go 3 points clear on top of the La Liga. Angel Correa and Marcus Llorente netted 2 goals each to seal the win for the hosts.
12 of Europe's top football clubs have announced to join the breakaway European Super League. This comes amid widespread opposition from within the game and beyond. In a statement, European Super League said Premier League's Big Six to join the ESL include Manchester United, Liverpool, Manchester City, Chelsea, Arsenal and Tottenham. They will join Spain's Barcelona, Real Madrid and Atletico Madrid and Italy's Juventus, AC Milan and Inter Milan. The move prompted UEFA to issue a strong statement jointly with English, Spanish and Italian leagues and football federations. The statement read, the Super League clubs will be banned from playing in any other domestic or international competition. Football's world governing body, FIFA, also joined them in condemning the plans. Meanwhile, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson termed the move very damaging for football. In the English Premier League, Tottenham Hotspur have sacked manager Jose Mourinho after just 17 months in charge. The Portuguese replaced Mauricio Pochettino as Spurs manager in November 2019. Spurs are currently 7th and were knocked out of the Europa League in March. They will face Manchester City in the Carabao Cup final on the 25th of April. No Premier League side has lost more points from winning positions this season than Spurs, who have dropped 20. Former Spurs midfielder Ryan Mason will take first team training on Monday. In cricket, Zimbabwe have announced a 15-man squad for the upcoming T20 series against Pakistan. Sean Williams will lead Zimbabwe in the series due to the absence of limited overs captain Shamu Shibahaba. Shibahaba also missed the previous series against Afghanistan due to an injury. Batsman Tadi Vanashe Marumani, pacer Tanaka Shivanga and spinner Tapiwa Mafuzda have received their maiden call-ups. Brendan Taylor and Craig Irvine are making their comeback after missing out on the last series against Afghanistan due to health issues. All-rounder Sikandar Raza will miss out due to an upper arm injury. The three-match T20 international series between Pakistan and Zimbabwe begins on the 21st of April and will be played behind closed doors at Harare Sports Club. In the National Basketball Association, Bam Adebayo has led Miami Heat to 109-107 point win over the Brooklyn Nets at home. Adebayo finished with 21 points, 15 rebounds and 5 assists, snapping host's 3-game losing streak. Gordon Dragic contributed 18 points for Miami, while Devine Dedmon added 10. Landry Shamet scored a career-high 30 points but fell short of securing a win for the Nets. Meanwhile, New York Knicks extended their winning run to 6 games by beating New Orleans Pelicans 122-112. In other fixtures, Los Angeles Clippers dominated Minnesota Timberwolves 124-105, while Charlotte Hornets edged the Portland Trail Blazers 109-105 points. Another weather situation from around the globe. And that is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus News.